Cheers, everybody, for the second time today.
Welcome back. We are doing another episode.
The same one, actually. We're repeating it.
Exactly. Our first one the audio didn't match up. If you're here live, let us know and tell us if you can hear us speaking before we...
Exactly. Our first one
the audio didn't match. It looks like it's working. Okay, good. This episode is an important one, just like every other one that we do. This is all about...
Yeah, because if it wasn't important, we wouldn't be talking about it. I always joke with her with that.
Focusing on the topic of really knowing when you're taking classes and having the balance between taking classes and then also applying the information that you're getting for classes. And we talked about this a little bit ago. We had the important conversation of making sure that you have a balance between the two.
Exactly. And it reminded me of when I was in the sauna earlier. I was with the older guy, and he had just, it sounded like in the last several months or 6 months, he had just started to go in the sauna. And he was talking about how he tries to stay in for 15 minutes now, but at the beginning, he had to build his endurance up. He had to build his nervous system up. Because if you don't, and you try to go 15 minutes in the sauna right away, you're not used to it, you could pass out. I talked to another guy several months ago that did. Not one in front of me, but he was telling me about how he did. So what does that mean with this? It means the guy learned the value of going into a sauna, and he realized that the peak is between 15 and 18, 19 minutes, but he knew that he had to apply it a little bit at a time. Like, let me start with 5 minutes, and then let me go to 8 minutes and 10 minutes. Because if he didn't, he would end up passing out. So think about your business. Think about any area where you're studying the information. And think about a time, like I've done this before, you've done this before, to where you tried to apply too much stuff at one time and it was so overwhelming, you got burnt out and you quit. So the point is like the word satisfaction. Enough action. You take too much action, you don't have that satisfaction. You take too less action, you don't have that satisfaction. We got to find that sweet spot. That guy's sweet spot was 5 minutes first, and then 8 minutes, and then 10 minutes. So it's a combination of learning the information and then applying enough action to get that satisfaction and that momentum in what you're doing.
Right. And sometimes you're going to feel like you're not satisfied. There's people that we've talked with, even myself included, where at the very beginning of my journey, I thought that I was waiting for that feeling of, oh, I'm at the right level, so now I can do the event. Or I'm at the right level, so now I can do this next, or put myself out there and give readings. But the thing that happens with that is trying to figure out, am I just in an endless cycle, in an endless pit of learning but not applying, taking a bunch of classes, waiting for things to feel like you're ready? And I talked about this on the other episode, the first time we made this episode, and it was all about Marie Forleo. She spoke about you have to start before you're ready. Now, when I first heard her bring up that phrase of start before you're ready, I thought I got it. It wasn't until I was going through the trenches and actually making the decisions to actually start when I was really uncomfortable and I wasn't fully satisfied with where I was at. I thought I could still grow, but I still took uncomfortable action. I understood why. My first event that I did, I was very scared. I actually had a friend kind of nudge me and say, you're fine. I'll find the people, you show up. And I was so nervous. I wanted to throw up. But once I did it and got that under my belt, I felt different and I understood there's times where you're not going to feel ready. And I'm saying you're not going to feel ready. You're never going to actually have that feeling like, okay, it's time overnight. It might be a nudge that you get where you're like, this doesn't make sense, but I know I have to take this step.
So back then when you were about to do that first event, if you were defining it yourself, you would have said, I don't feel ready now.
Oh yeah,
I feel like
feel
I'm
ready
overwhelmed. And then you had a friend nudge you and you took the action. Now your new definition is when I feel that energy that I felt before that first event, I know that that's time to go. That's time to take action. So it's like really checking in with yourself and figuring out, what is that for you? For me, it's being a little bit scared and a little bit excited, and then I take that action. If I'm too scared or I'm too excited, I'm on grounded, I can become overwhelmed, right? And then I burn out. So it's finding that sweet spot. And it sounded like you found your sweet spot with that first event. And I could see over the last 11 years or so, you do that same thing with the retreat, with the podcast, with every decision that you made. You were a little bit scared, maybe a lot scared sometimes, but it felt similar energy to before you did that first event. Maybe not as intense, because as you continue to do this, that energy starts to dissipate a little bit. You still feel it, but it's not as overwhelming.
Well, and you start getting comfortable with making quick decisions. And we spoke about that before. The importance of really doing things in a way that's effective is going to make quick decisions, whether it's in a business or it's in relationships. When you have that overwhelming feeling like, okay, I know I want to do something, just do it. Like, just do it. Don't wait for the right time. And I know we spoke about this before about a lot of psychic mediums and healers and sensitives, or people that are open to the spirituality, they're asking for signs. And if you're asking for a sign for something to be done in a certain way, you're like, I want this result to happen. That's your answer. You don't need the sign. If you're wanting a certain sign to come out, that shows where you want it to go. Now, on the flip side of it, your ego could say, well, I don't want this information to come out because I'm afraid. I don't want to do it right now. So if it does come out, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so nervous. That's a different kind of feeling. If you don't want something to happen, you don't want a sign to show up because you're so afraid to take the action. So it's all about tuning into your own compass.
Yes, and what you're describing there, when people are looking for answers on the outside, and I hope this medium or this intuitive says, yes, stay in this relationship, or no, don't take that job. Whatever it is, it's showing that you're not trusting your own intuition.
Right.
You're not trusting your own instincts. And that's the foundation of all of this, right? Everything we're talking about, learning, applying, if you don't trust your own instincts and your decision making, that could put you off 10 years.
Oh, definitely.
And we want to speed up time. We don't want it to drag on. So if you're doing that pattern like Lindsay just described, and you're seeking all of advice from outside of you, maybe it's time to slow down a little bit. Practice trust in your intuition. One way you can do that is go back in time and think about the moments that you made decisions very quickly. What was different about that? And you could write a list of those moments. Write a list of those moments of when you made decisions very quickly, it was effortless. And why was that different? How were you feeling in your body? What was going on in your world? Maybe you were working out then and you were more clear. What is that for you compared to the times to where you're overanalyzing everything? What's different about that? So you could do a T-chart. You could put on the left side, powerful decisions I made. On the right side, when I was in my head and overthinking everything. And just describe and get to know yourself, get to know your body, your energy on when you make decisions quickly and when you don't. And from that awareness, transformation happens. And then you could apply everything else in this episode too.
Oh yeah,
a lot easier.
So quickly. And I think that's where a lot of people create the success and fulfillment in their life, is they're listening to that. They're tuning into it. So going back, like you said, and reflecting on the experiences that you actually said yes to certain things, and you did it based on intuition. You were in good energy. You mentioned working out. For me, like, we've been doing our trampolining, and I find that after I go on the trampoline, even if it's for the 11 minutes that I go on it, I'm in a space where I can think clearly. I think the worst space to be in is if you're in an emotional space and you're trying to make a decision, you're not going to get a clear decision. I almost would set the intention of, okay, I have this question in my mind. I'm wondering if I should make this decision. Let me put that out there for the day or for the week. Let me allow it to kind of float in when I'm not forcing it, when I'm not emotional, and let it come in naturally. Because when you're trying to get something emotionally, I know people, when they try to book readings and they're like in a space where like, I need an answer right now. Like, it could be about a house, it could be about a relationship. And they're sending an email to my assistant like, I'm looking for a reading right now, and they can't get in right then. That's actually a good thing. It's almost a protection for them, I believe. Because if you're emotional, that gauge is going to affect sometimes the reading if you're very strong-willed. and you kind of put it in your head, I want her to say this, I want her to say this. There's actually a reading that I'm thinking of right now where I had a client and I kept hearing her voice tell me the answers. I'm like, I'm hearing this, but it's in your voice. And she started laughing and she's like, I was actually saying it in my head over and over again. So you want to make sure that you are in a clear space to receive what is for you in the most divine way. And it's really powerful when you can do it yourself. And then maybe even get that extra confirmation if you really want an intuitive reading.
Right. So we've seen two extremes with this, with learning and applying information. On one end, you have somebody who's applying all kinds of information. They're creating a successful business. Maybe some other areas of their life are going well, but they're not receiving, right? And even if they're joining other programs, they're in these programs and their heart's closed off and they're not receiving. They're not fully receiving. And when you don't fully receive, you're stopping the natural flow of the universe. See, what we know about you, listening to this episode right now, is you're somebody that most of the people in your life come to for help or advice. And it's been like that most of your life. So you're so used to working out that muscle of giving advice, of supporting other people, and you got used to not receiving. So now that muscle is very weak, right? I'm one of those, right? Over the last 10, 12 years, I had to really exercise that muscle of receiving, right? Getting coaches, joining masterminds, all that. It was very uncomfortable for me. A lot easier for me to teach and to coach other people and to run retreats. Now it's getting almost equal there. And I noticed that when I go to serve people now, it's even more powerful. So on one extreme, you have people that are just going, taking action, even, they're just not open to that receiving part. On the other extreme, you have somebody who's just taking course after course after course. I need to take more courses, more certifications before I take action. And you get caught in that loop of just educating yourself. And you wonder why you're not moving forward.
And you're waiting for external validation. Like sometimes you have to go and you take a class, and I've seen some mediumship peers, they're like, well, this mentor told this person this. I'm waiting for them to say it to me. I'm waiting for them to say, you are the medium. I remember at the very beginning of the journey, and what takes place during that time is you're waiting for this external validation from teachers, mentors, friends, social media, and you're totally missing the boat on what comes through naturally to you and you feeling valuable enough to know that, okay, I can go to that next step. Some people even, I'm thinking of locations when you want to move. That's another example. We talk about work and taking classes and wanting to grow, but sometimes we think, well, we need to wait to move. Let me wait till everything's perfect until I move the locations. That's another common thing that comes up too.
Yeah, and why is that? Why do we feel like we need to wait to move locations? Why do we feel like we need to wait several years and take all these courses before we take action? Like, think about that. Who taught you that? Who taught you those rules? Was it a mentor? Was it the public school system? We were both teachers in the public school systems, and we understand that they teach you. Like, we had to go to school for 4 years, spend a lot of money before we could even be a teacher. So like you get wired from the public school system that you need to do all of this education before you take action. Like, we believe in education. We believe in masterminds. That's why we run them ourselves. So we believe in all that, the power of it. But it's like, think about all the books and the masterminds or retreats or mentorships, anything you've learned over the last year. Think about that. On one side, do another T-chart. On the left side, write down all of that, right? Because it's really important to track that, to remember, right? You are putting in the work. You are educating yourself. But on the right side of that T-chart, think about where have I applied this information in my life? I believe this is the most important side. Because you could read all of these books, you could take all these courses, but if you're not applying it into your life, you're just keeping it as head knowledge, which is only so valuable. But then when you apply it into your life, you're wiring it into your soul. Now it becomes wisdom. So do that T-chart and just the truth will set you free. Be all the way honest here. Nobody else needs to see this, but the truth will set you free. It'll create momentum for you.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is right now everyone is on social media. You're taking in so much content, like whether it's this podcast or, reels or a podcast, and you're like, yes, that's how I feel about life, and you share it, but taking it in and actually feeling satisfied with the content and saying I agree with it isn't enough anymore. Like, it never was enough. I think the big thing is yes, you recognize that you resonate with the message. You might resonate with this message. You might resonate with the reel, or, you watch an athlete share something. You're like, yeah, that I agree with that. But are you actually applying it in your life? So when you mention the T chart, it's like, okay, what steps can I take to actually take that information that they said that I resonate with to make it real in my life? Because you can share all the reels and memes and videos all you want to say, this is what I believe, but are you actually living it? If you're not living it, you're not feeling fulfilled. And I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, it is.
That we found. It's like you need that fulfillment factor to actually feel like you're progressing in your life. You can't just share something and say, I believe in it and it makes me feel good to share it. It's a temporary high. So that's the biggest thing, is figuring out how can I change that in my life.
What's the next tiniest step? Because sometimes we try to take, like I was talking about that guy earlier, sometimes we try to take way too much steps. It overwhelms our system, and then we stop. So what's the next tiniest step? Like from this podcast episode, what's the insight you have? What's the next tiniest step that you can take to create momentum in that area?
Right.
And that's the name of the game. Learning, tracking your insights, taking the next tiniest step. You do that over a year, over 5 years, 10 years. The book, The Compound Effect, if you haven't read it, it's a powerful book to read. It just talks about how these small, little, simple actions we take, whether it's in finances with numbers, or whether it's in your health, going for a walk, 30 minutes a day, whatever it is for you, they compound over time, and they create way more value than the actual time that you put in.
Right.
So it's powerful on where you're investing your time and energy, and what are the next tiniest steps that you're taking to get to that vision, that goal that you see so clearly.
The Compound Effect and Atomic Habits, those two books together are life-changing. And it goes with this conversation that we're having. So we want to hear from you. What insights have you heard come to mind intuitively where you're like, you know what? I've been doing the same thing over and over again. I've been taking the same classes, or I've been reading the same books, or saying the same thing about my life. How can I actually apply what I believe or feel in my inner knowing? How can I actually change things? So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time. Bye.